It's kind of easy to be a pacifist when you're living in a comfort that was purchased by other people's deaths. Hi, this is Robert Stearns, and thanks for joining our final installment on the life and legacy of Dietrich Bonhoeffer. He's been so much in the Zeitgeist this year. He's just very much been on the forefront of people's thoughts. His iconic picture is showing up on billboards, on t-shirts, kind of showing up everywhere. He's emerging as, and in fact, we found out, I think it was the last episode, the cathedral in Great Britain, he's lauded as a modern day saint. And so just an extraordinary individual whose life continues to have impact today. Glad that you stopped by to join us. If you're new to the channel, please take a moment and subscribe and like. This is the home of what we call Jerusalem-based Christianity. What was the Christianity of the early church? What was the Christianity pre-Constantine? And how do we really search that out? And what do we understand as the moral imperatives, the transcendent moral imperatives that maybe have gotten lost in a lot of the religiosity of modern American Western Christianity? So what does Bonhoeffer have to do with that? Bonhoeffer has everything to do with that because he was born into a family and into a culture kind of similar to American church culture today. He was a nominal Christian. This was the state church. So there really was not a separation between German culture and German Christianity or German spirituality. They were really fully integrated. And yet Bonhoeffer has this spiritual thirst. He has this desire to go deeper in his faith. And as his theological journeys continue, he's profoundly influenced by the African American Christian experience. He sees there a place of community, a place of activism, a place of fighting injustice. And he incorporates this into his theology. He incorporates covenantal community into his theology. He writes the famous book, Life Together. He rejects a Christianity that is costless. I have a situation I'm walking through right now with someone in our church, and they've made some decisions. Honestly, nothing that terribly wild or unusual, but just decisions of faith that their family doesn't understand. And they said, well, why would God tell you to do that? Or why would God tell you? Well, because, when you read the book, that's the point of the book. The point of the book is God instructs his people to do hard things. That's the point of the entire story. From Genesis to Revelation, it's the people of God being led to walk in biblical culture or kingdom culture, which is almost always at odds with mainstream culture. And so Bonhoeffer finds himself in this place. Increasingly, his fame, his impact, his influence as a theologian is growing. He's got this heartfelt evangelical zeal to him that is at odds with some, not all, but some of the state church around him. And so he really rises in that time and continues to speak to us today. He begins to work with German military intelligence, where he kind of becomes a double spy. I mean, he's playing both sides of the coin there in order to try to raise up a resistance force against Hitler. And oh, by the way, this was especially interesting because previous to this, Bonhoeffer had very much been a pacifist. He had very much believed that the gospel called us to pacifism. But his beliefs underwent a great change as the reality of evil arose before him. It's kind of easy to be a pacifist when you're living in a comfort that was purchased by other people's deaths. Easy for current day America to, just preach peace and love and ignore the fact that if it had not been for the greatest generation and their sacrifices in World War II and so many other sacrifices of our brave military throughout history, we live in a comfort. We live in a place of peace that was purchased by other people not being pacifists, right? So Bonhoeffer undergoes a theological transformation regarding his pacifism. And finally, in 1943, he is arrested. But even from prison, and this is amazing because here he's like a modern day Apostle Paul. I mean, Paul is doing all of his writing, his apostolic writings from prison, and so was Bonhoeffer. He writes letters and papers from prison, one of his most influential works that reflects his deepening understanding of faith and suffering, how faith and suffering walk hand in hand together. Finally, he's at Flossenburg concentration camp, and on that fateful day, April 9th, 1945, he is executed. And there is this sad, tragic irony to this, that he's executed just 2 or 3 weeks before the war ended and that concentration camp was liberated. And that's just one of those sad things that you kind of look and say, God, I guess you're going to explain that to us in eternity. One does wonder, would Bonhoeffer have had the incredible fruit that remains, right? The Bible calls us not only to fruit, but fruit that remains. Would he have had the enduring impact if he had not lost his life? The Bible says, unless a grain of wheat falls in the ground and dies, it abides alone. There was something about his death as a martyr that quickly caused his writings, his life, to take on this very special importance. And so his writings, The Cost of Discipleship, Letters and Papers from Prison, so many others, have inspired countless Christians all around the world to stand up against injustice, to stand up in covenantal community, and to embrace a costly and committed faith. I want to invite you to do that right now by becoming a part of his legacy by signing the Bonhoeffer Declaration. Tens of thousands of mostly Christians, I'm assuming maybe there's some non-Christians. It certainly is not limited to Christians, but tens of thousands of you have already signed this declaration that says, we will not allow the evil of anti-Semitism to go without us standing against it. We will stand with the Jewish people wherever they are. Would you consider being part of Dietrich Bonhoeffer's legacy by signing the Bonhoeffer Declaration today? The link is there. And this is an hour like never before where we need to gather together as our brother's keeper and stand alongside the Jewish people. Christians must disavow and work against racism in any and all forms. Let me say that again. Christians must disavow and actively work against racism of any and all forms. And the oldest of all racisms on planet Earth is anti-Semitism. It's the canary in the mine shaft. It's that first racism that appears when societies are beginning to disintegrate, when societies are beginning to break down. You see anti-Semitism raise its ugly head, and then many other racisms. It was Bonhoeffer's colleague, Niemöller, who quoted that famous quote that we all know now. They came for the socialists, and I did not speak out because I was not a socialist. They came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. They came for the Jews, and I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. Then they came for me, and there was nobody left to speak out for me. Martin Luther King Jr., injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. And so it's up to you and I to be our brother's keeper, and in this particular moment to stand with the Jewish people. And you can do that by going right now and signing the the Bonhoeffer Declaration at bonhoeffer.org. Thank you for learning with me today about a modern day saint, Dietrich Bonhoeffer.